All right, welcome in everyone. UGA football live with JC Shelton. That is former Georgia tight end Artie Lynch. We're back for week 2, episode 2, spring practice here at UGA football live. All right, we've got a couple things to talk about. I'm excited to get your insight on a couple developments, and then another development or two that weren't fun. But quick note to start off the show, kick it off. G-Day update just announced yesterday. This is a Wednesday. Kickoff April 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Dog walk set for 11:50 in the morning, and $10 tickets are going to go on sale on Monday. So look out for that. And remember, this game is not going to be on TV. It is going to be on the Georgia Bulldogs Radio Sports Network. So they'll be on the call. The guys will, but not on TV. So if you want to see the guys in action, you got to get to Athens. This should be a great day, as it always is. Artie, so your former tight end coach is back in Athens now. John Lilly, back as an offensive assistant, going to help out Mike Bobo and co. Georgia also added a long-time NFL coach and Phil Rashauer to his staff as well to help with the offensive line and Stacey Searles. Artie, I know you have a lot to say at John Lilly. I'm just going to let you go at it.
Yeah, look, I've obviously I've known Coach Lilly for, almost half my lifetime. Now I think about it, probably more, almost since I was 15, 16 years old when he first started recruiting me. And his first year was my senior year in college. I think he had 1 year at UGA coaching like Trip Chandler, Aaron White, Bruce Figgins, Bryce Ross is a throwback name for you. And Orson and I were were the first two tight ends that he had ever signed. So we were kind of part of his first recruiting class, if you will. And just had a very unique opportunity to learn from him, just become friends with him, as life has moved on, right? We still stay in touch. We still have our tight ends, Lily. I think we call ourselves the Lily Dogs or something. And it's a bunch of us who played for him. But I think the one thing that, when people think of football coaches or just the stereotypes is kind of rah-rah, very not rigid, but rough around the edges, right? People don't think of intellectual, cerebral temperament, the temperament, very a lot of temperance, right? And Coach Lilly is very much all of those things. We all described Coach Lilly as, we call him Lily Dog. We were he was always cool, calm, and collective, right? And he had a very, very high football IQ. Right, he was a Division III college quarterback at Guilford College in West Virginia, which is a Division III school, and kind of came up in the Bobby Bowden ranks, which is how he ultimately got connected with Coach Rick, and then ultimately, obviously, to Georgia, and then has been in and out of college and NFL coaching since his time at Georgia. But I think what people don't understand is he had I thought a unique opportunity to take over for Mike Bobo as the offensive coordinator when Bobo left for Colorado State. If people remember, or remember maybe they don't, we played in the Belk Bowl, maybe, which was then the Belk. Now it's mayonnaise, who knows? But played Louisville, and we kind of routed them, right? And Coach Lilly was the interim OC for that game and called a really great game. We all knew that he had the capability of kind of playing that role as an offensive coordinator if he were ever given that opportunity. And we were all kind of hopeful that he was going to get promoted from within. Obviously, it didn't work that way. But I think I highlight that story is because his football IQ is very high. He is such a good developer of talent, but also he understood where our strengths were as a tight end group and where we could ultimately fit into the offense based on the game plan that was being constructed over the week. And, it's easy to go to bat when you have AJ Green in your room, where all these stud guys, and Tony Ball could just be like, hey, we just got to get it to AJ, right? But when we have so many offensive weapons like we did in 2012, 2013, but a lot of it was up to the position coaches to articulate to the head coach and the offensive coordinator how they wanted to implement their position group into the offense. And while we had some good players in the tight end room, I thought Coach Shirley did an unbelievable job each week of like dicing up some plays that were going to be good for us, where we could have an impact and then ultimately work ourselves into the game plan. And without a very good, smart position coach who obviously can also recruit, right? You can't have that. And often a position group can become kind of an afterthought. Mm-hmm. And so, I've always thought very highly of him from a football perspective. And obviously I think the world of him as a person too. So I'm super excited, obviously very biased. So keep that in mind, everyone.
Yeah. I think that's a follow-up question though, before we move on from Lily, is if you can kind of take into account, your NFL experience, working with different coaches at that position. Does Lily provide anything unique looking back at it from a tight end role perspective?
100%. And I'll give you an example. When we were talking about this just offline, Orson Charles and I came in the same class, as I mentioned earlier. Orson was a parade All-American, playing high school, state champion, teammates there in Murray. I was an under All-American. We were two different types of players, right? But on top of that, we learned differently, right? Like Orson, very successful, very smart in his own right. But like what people don't really understand, and unless you coach at any level, you will understand this, is like coaches are teachers. Like at the basic fundamental level of what a coach is supposed to do is he or she is supposed to be a good teacher. And Lily had a lot of different personalities in that tight end room. He had guys from South Georgia, he had guys from Boston, he had guys from Missouri, he had guys from Columbus, Georgia, you name it, right? Tampa, Florida. All of us learn at different paces, and all of us learn differently. And he had an uncanny ability to connect and figure out in real time how each individual best learn, and would essentially incorporate his installation of offenses based on how we learned as individuals. And like, I didn't really see it until I got older, until I realized like, oh, he's changing up how he's saying or doing this, but it's still relevant to me and I still understand it. But the new kid also gets it. And like, to me, that's how you end up developing guys who are raw athletes day one into really good players, right? From a mental perspective, obviously, guys, there could be people don't live up to expectations, and a lot of that ends up, there's a number of different factors. But in terms of getting guys to understand the offense and what we're trying to do as a team, and able to kind of have the emotional intelligence along with the football IQ to cater to everyone's like best learning practices, it was easily the most impressive thing I've seen from a coaching perspective, because it's very hard to do, because you're dealing with so many different types of people from so many different types of backgrounds, particularly at a football team in college.
Yeah, dude, I love the move, man. And Georgia kind of kept it in house too. I think there was a report just the day before Georgia officially announced it, but there was not like rumors or rumblings or hey, John Lilly's in talks. I love the move. Obviously, talented recruiter. Ties to the state of Georgia from recruiting there for so long. Obviously, coached there as well previously. So adding him with Todd Hartley, man, that's a dangerous combination, especially considering the group of talent you have at that position too. I love it.
I also think it's worth, Todd Hartley has done an exceptional job for the better part of 5-6 years now. Yeah, I imagine that his agent gets a lot of calls for different opportunities for him. And I think what we've seen, what made Saban great is he built up a bullpen, right? And I think what Kirby has also done in recent years is build up a bullpen, like bring in guys, hire them, pay them, have them kind of ingratiate themselves in the culture. And then if someone were to leave by coincidence, right, unexpectedly, you'll be able to plug and play. So
Yeah.
that's a bit of a conspiracy theory on my part about Todd, but he's
No, that's dude, you're on
yeah.
it. And I was really thinking about that when I was, thinking about today's show
Mm-hmm.
and John Lilly hiring, and even, Rashard as well hiring. I was like,
Yep.
what is maybe Todd Hartley or Stacey Searles, what is going on with them in their minds as far as their career? Does Kirby Smart want to promote Hartley to something else or give him another title, have him
Mm-hmm.
work more of a team focus other than just the tight end position, which, he's probably the top recruiter.
Easy.
Right. So maybe there
Mm-hmm.
is a stepping stone for him that Kirby's getting prepared for, something like that. But that'll
Mm-hmm.
probably be a long time down the road, at least after next season.
Yeah, totally. But just a thought
Yeah.
for inside baseball.
Yeah. News notes again here. Redshirt freshman Daniel Calhoun on the offensive line will miss the spring with a foot injury. Kirby announced that yesterday. Tough for him. He was actually playing really well at the guard spot, right, fighting for those guard spots, and not going to have this spring to really show and prove his worth. Going to have to wait to the fall. Thankfully, it's not a serious injury, but he will miss the spring. Nitro Tuggle and Marquess Easley, man. Two of the latest driving arrests for Georgia. The media loves these stories, man, and Kirby Smart doesn't. I've got a quote here from Kirby, and I think I'll open it up with that. This is what he responded when asked about it. It's really his first time talking about it since it happened, but they suspended both Easley and Tuggle for driving-related arrests. Quote, I look at what I would do with my children when there's 18 to 20 to 19-year-olds that make mistakes, and the consequences that come with those are based on a case-by-case basis. That's really what these two right now are dealing with, quote. Basically, he's saying what he usually says, which is we're working to fix the issue. We have guys coming in and talk to these guys about situations that they could find themselves in and how to avoid that. I think Tuggle was driving 107 miles an hour on the loop in Athens. It's just dumb, man. Just dumb, dude. And these are kids that make dumb mistakes, but we have to, it's happened so much already. I don't know what else to say on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't get the car thing, the driving thing. And look, it's not immune to Georgia. I mean, you've seen some honestly tragic situations amongst football players and in athletes in the past, but it's like even dating back to like Jay Williams, the basketball player, now works for ESPN. If people remember this, I'm really dating myself now, but I think it was like the week after he got drafted, he was like speeding on a motorcycle, right? And I think it fundamentally changed his career. He got very hurt and never was the player that he was at Duke. Ben Roethlisberger motorcycle accident, right? Obviously, the tragic situation that happened with Henry Ruggs and in Las Vegas, and I don't know if it's like an adrenaline thing, right? Like football, you get all this adrenaline, and it's like a natural high that you experience on like Saturdays and Sundays, and then you're just like, it's like I have to speed. I have to go 100 miles per hour. I honestly have no idea.
Hey,
right?
his girlfriend was in the car. Just a side note. I bet that has no impact on the situation, but his girlfriend was in the car.
Yeah, but it's like whatever the circumstances are, it's it's I who knows, but it's clearly not like registering. There's no way Kirby's not doing like I guarantee you he is. I could only imagine like the internal like protocols that he has, and it's not. It's yeah, I guess it's not registering. I don't know. It's tough to see though. But I try not to pass judgment. That's all I have to say.
No, absolutely. As far as that, I think the silver lining here is at least these guys are really young. These two guys, and they're not like veterans, which happened multiple times last year.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it'll turn into a situation where these older guys are, and I think this is what it is for me. The older players on that team have to step up and make their feelings known on guys making mistakes like this, doing stupid stuff. Have some accountability within your own group, because coaches can only do so much, right? And I think you think back, and you were on so many teams. I was on teams. The guy that you respect the most on that team telling you something, with obviously the team in mind, but also you as a person, rather than coming from a coach, it hits a little different.
Totally.
So I think that's the responsibility for these guys. And that's the tough thing. And I think as the spring develops too, you already need leaders to step up. Who's going to step up here and talk to these guys a little bit, maybe encourage them at the same time. Like, this one mistake for you isn't the end of anything for you. I do like that from a Kirby Smart's perspective of not kicking these guys completely off the team because they speed. Right. And especially being they're so young, give them another opportunity. I think they deserve it. I think everybody deserves another opportunity. But they're suspended right now and they have to work their way back. Now it could be a really good thing for their careers as well. Getting in trouble like this and having to work your way back and prove it to yourself. And by that time, if you do work your way back into a role, you already have that confidence. It's like, look where I've came from all the way back. Let's go. It could be a stepping stone for them. So thinking positively on that note. We'll move on. A couple of practice notes we'll talk about here. I find this interesting already, so I included it. So Georgia and Kirby Smart went into this. They're focusing on the run game, both on offense and defense. They know the statistics last year. Georgia, 102nd in the country, I think, in rushing yards per game. Not near where they were in rushing yards stopped on defense. So a clear focus on that. And here's a quote from him. We put a big emphasis on running and stopping the run because we feel like we all lacked in both of those areas last year. So the spring practice has been shifted or adjusted a little bit towards stopping the run, being able to run the ball. I don't know if we've improved on it, but we've harped on it. Clearly a change for them. They noticed, and they're attacking it head on, I think. I found that really interesting. I think it's good, considering also you have questions behind Nate Frazier at running back, an offensive line that's reworked, a defensive line that's reworked. At least you want to stop the run and run the ball, at the very least, as those guys work in pass pro. Find that really interesting. Quarterback-wise, Ryan Puglisi, and we talked about how he's been impressing, and I think with a talented kid like that and a huge arm, it's hard not to impress. You're going to make crazy throws, plays that just absolutely turn heads from everyone in attendance watching, and also the coaches and the players know it too when you connect on a good one. But from what I'm hearing, Stockton, and it's not a surprise, the experience and him being in his fourth spring and knowing this offense better than anyone, at least in that quarterback room, he's the guy. You can tell he's better in the pocket. He's more decisive, better with his feet, I think, because of the experience in the offense right now. Puglisi has been making those types of throws that you think he should because of that arm he has, but at the same time, he just doesn't know the offense as well. The plays get a little clunky at times. So what I'm hearing, so I think Gunner, he's doing what we thought he would do, I think. And Puglisi's still getting first-team reps. He's pushing, and he could even – you think about he missed last spring. This is really his first true spring. So he's not much far ahead than he would have been last year at this time. So
Bubble, sorry for interrupting, but Mike Bubble will continue to rotate him in the with first-team reps all spring. If they don't announce the first, leading up to at the end of spring ball, like he'll get first team reps even through fall camp. That's how most offensive coordinators, unless the guy is like, we got like a Stafford there and he's just like wants to take, but as long as they're going to always continue to develop the number 2 guy and get him first team reps in the event of something like the SEC championship happens where Gunner comes in, right? Like you don't want Gunners, you don't want the quarterback's first time looking at the first team offensive line and be like, oh, I don't know any of you guys. You know what I mean? Like,
how you doing?
You don't want that to be at halftime of the SEC championship game, right? You want to rotate them and get them comfortable, and I think they're doing that for those reasons.
Yeah, pretty. Not surprising here, but I thought it was interesting. Kirby did say, quote, I think about if we had all Gunners at every position. And he's not talking about Gunners on special teams. He's talking about Gunner stock. It's clear that he loves his mindset.
Yeah.
So it's not a crazy hot take, but Gunner Stockton's your starting quarterback. Drew Bobo doing his thing at center. All right. So Georgia goes from Cedar Van Prank-Granger. You had 1 year of his name's blanking on me. Oh my goodness. Jared Wilson. Jared Wilson. You had 1 year of him, and then you have another change at center here. Drew Bobo took some snaps when Jared Wilson was hurt, took over, and I think he did great there during the games. But we were like, okay, is there somebody else going to work his way into it? I think Drew Bobo is the man here. Kirby Smart raved about him. He's the only player on the team, at least offensive line wise, that covers 30 to 40 yards down the field every play. And that's a quote from Kirby Smart. So he's doing the thing at center. I love that. It's a huge part of the offensive line. He's the quarterback of the offensive line. I think he knows the offense well. I mean, his dad is Mike Bobo. He should know.
Mm-hmm.
And then cornerback battle is my last practice note here. Daniel Harris, we talked about this a little bit last week when we were going through Can Georgia Reload. If you missed last week's episode, you can find it on YouTube, UGA Football Live. We talked about that rotation opposite of Dalen Everett, and it sounds like Daniel Harris, DeMello Jones, and Ellis Robinson are the ones rotating with the first team. So they're all getting their opportunities. Georgia's working that out. Wouldn't be surprised if you see a combination of those guys, especially early in the season. And it kind of changed for Georgia. If you think about last year throughout the season, you went through a point where you had Julian Humphrey getting a lot of time opposite of Dalen, and then Daniel Harris took over that towards the end of the season. So something to look out for this spring. We'll get into right now new players that will be spring standouts. It's our bulk of the show here. Just combine talent with position needs. That's what I was thinking here, my mindset and working these up. And also some notes I'm hearing about practice and how these guys are doing. We'll start it with Artie's bread and butter, and that's tight end Ethan Barbour. So I think Barbour is more of a complete football player than Ellis Williams. Ellis Williams, highly recruited, more highly recruited. He's the 6'7" guy, all right, the huge upside. But for right now, from what I hear, Barbour moves like a college football player. Ellis is kind of missing some easy passes here and there as he works to get better as a receiver. But Barbour has been really dependable. And that's a stacked tight end room. This is not necessarily going to mean a lot of snaps for him next year, but it means snaps for him, at least some. Still a lot of growth between the two, but take us back to your first spring, Artie. And I know we talked about it before, but those of you watching or listening haven't heard. Artie, your first spring and just the cold water in the face of getting into SEC football for the first time.
Yeah, it's and you and I, we spoke about this probably last year, probably last spring. We talked about the importance of a spring football season in the development that takes place across the board. So I did not graduate early when I was coming out of college. I think we had 6 guys that came in early, maybe 5. Now I'm willing to bet that's tripled. Now it's probably 18 people come in. Yeah. So I came in for the summer, did summer workouts. You try to just stay above water, and then as soon as camp hits, it's you're trying to learn and you're learning a lot, but you don't really have time to sit back and really understand what you're learning. You're just they slap you on the ass. They say, go get them type deal. I did not redshirt as a freshman. So it isn't until your first week of installation of that spring ball that you realize how much information you actually obtained and learned during the season. And the beautiful thing about spring ball is you practice, you watch the film the next day, you lift, you go through it, and then you watch the film basically again before practice on Thursday. So you're absorbing all those reps, both mentally and the reps that you did in practice. And you just get so much better at becoming a better football player. And so my first spring, it was almost like I had all the information that was overloaded from the fall started to make sense. And it started to become less fuzzy and having that kind of static sound in your head, and more we run this route at this angle to get leverage on the strong safety when they're playing, when they're sitting on it and they're playing 4 high, right? Instead of you looking at the play on the playbook, I'm running a 10-yard bench route. And so I think it's when you go from understanding the plays to understanding why we run the plays that we run when we run them, and learning the attention to detail, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm always, I'm glad I had my high school experience the way I did, but looking back on it, I was always super envious of the guys that did spring ball and then fall camp and then got to do another spring ball, because at that point they were just there were so many things that were second nature to them that
Just playing fast, right?
just playing fast, right? And I think that more than anything, when you think 1 millisecond less and react 1 millisecond faster, you just become that much better of a football player. And I think that's what spring ball is for. Like the football player that you are entering spring ball to the football player you are leaving spring ball is like two different people, right? And that's why I think it's so important. And you mentioned, Ryan didn't get a chance to really have a spring ball last year, which is probably why he's having the struggles that he's having this year. Because once that regular season hits, things are going so fast.
Yeah.
Like you're not getting practice reps. If you're a third string QB, you got red team, your scout team, where you're running other people's plays that are kind of half-ass. And then you're just learning a game plan week in and week out. Spring ball, you're like, okay, let's get down to basics, strip you down, build you back up. And I think that's the beautiful thing about spring football and why it's such an important part to your development as a young player, but even as like when you're a 3rd or 4-year starter.
Yep. Moving on, we'll go wide receivers here. Talon Taylor, and no surprise, right? I mean, I think he was the most highly recruited receiver that Georgia signed since George Pickens, if I'm not mistaken. 5-star guy. He was the number 4 receiver by 247 Sports. Legit playmaker. No surprise. Like again, he did it at high school. He did it, 7-on-7s against the best guys in the country, and he's doing it in spring ball very well. Obviously, still a lot to learn for these guys, but these are the guys that, if they get to play G-Day, barring any injury, knock on wood, you're probably gonna leave saying, "Who was that kid?" You're probably gonna go look him up after you leave Sanford Stadium. Been turning heads with the big catch so far. Puglisi has been the deliverer of some of those passes. Again, big arm for that kid, and he's got a playmaker in Talon Taylor, and hopefully we get to see those two in the future. But he caught 84 passes for 1,600 yards, 24 touchdowns as a senior. Excited. If you're a Georgia fan too and watching last year, I mean, you're watching these receivers very, very closely, and he's a name that I think will stand out to you. Elijah Griffin on the defensive line, and again, this is kind of a position of need as well, with a bunch of new starters going to come down in the fall. And Elijah Griffin, he's drawn those Jalen Carter comps. I feel like it's really tough to put those expectations on a kid early on. He's like, 17 maybe. So that's kind of crazy, I think. I mean, he's bigger than Jalen. He is, I would say, as far as strength-wise, just hearing from Warren Brinson and Jordan Hall, those guys have already been in the room and watched him work a little bit, and especially in postseason practices. He's strong as an ox. I think that's what Brinson said. He's an ox. Talent is good enough for him, but I think it's important to note here is what Kirby Smart really talks about with these guys on the trenches on both sides of the ball. It's like adjusting to the physicality difference. And Artie, you've talked about that when you came to Georgia, and adjusting to the physicality. It's a little different. And hitting guys in the mouth every day, and they're just as strong as you or stronger, right? They're used to pushing big bodies around. You have to adjust to that. I think that's the biggest thing from him, being in the trenches, right in the interior, is adjusting to that. But he has done well so far. Edge here will stay on this, and this is interesting. And what I just talked about, the physicality standpoint, what I've heard about Edge Isaiah Gibson, former 5-star, number 1 player at his position in the class, really similar to Griffin in that aspect. But he seems to have asserted himself well as far as physicality goes, and Georgia loves that from the edge, right? Think of the guys they've had there: Trayvon Walker, Mykel Williams, Chaz Chambliss, and Chaz gets, he's unheralded because of the other names that were beside him in that room. But man, he was nasty physical. And that's what you want. So that's kind of a good. I heard that, and it really stood out to me. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gibson has a good spring here and then builds on that in the fall, because that is a huge position of need. When you're losing starters, there is an opportunity for a young guy like him, and you don't see it much with Georgia teams under Kirby Smart. I think you're seeing that. You will have to see it more because there's just less depth. Kirby talks about it all the time. There's less depth than you've had in the national championship teams and such, where you have backups on backups on backups who can play. I think there's an opportunity for a true freshman, Isaiah Gibson, to really make an impact. An offensive line, Juwan Gaston, 6'7", 360. We knew already, we talked about it last year in the spring. We knew, and I think you said really interesting. Well, I'll just stop here. Well, you said something really interesting about kind of Mark Richt, I think, and how he recruited compared to Kirby when it comes to big guys.
Yep.
And kind of like Mark Richt was like, okay, he's a little bit smaller here. We need to get him up to weight or something like that. But Kirby's like 6'7", 360, 380. Yeah, we'll take it. We'll get you down to about 320. Yeah.
He recruits frames. I bet you, and again, I don't know this for sure. I don't know. I've never met Kirby, so I don't know him. But my guess is his philosophy is like there. God only makes so many people with those frames. It's just it's a fact. And when you find that frame, you hope that he plays, basketball, because then you can look at his feet and you're like, well, that's a big dude, right? No, he's not Michael Jordan out there, but man, he can post up, he can move, he can rebound it. And I'm willing to bet that that's kind of like a litmus test for Kirby and Searles, because it's easy to find a 6'5" guy who maybe was playing tight end or tackle in college, and then all of a sudden he's like, well, he's gonna be a guard, right? But it's hard to find just a mammoth of a human being and then turn him into a football player. And I think we had a guy, Kwame Gathers, who was like that when I played. He ended up playing nose tackle, but we tried like hell to have him play offensive tackle because he was like one of one. His frame, 6'7", 330, and he can move, right? And I think Kirby does a great job of finding those guys and then molding them, by slimming them down and getting them a little bit quicker and nutrition and discipline into football players. Next thing you know, they're going to play 10 years in the league as a left tackle, right? So It's a different approach. I like the latter approach more, but obviously Coach Rick had a lot of success with O-line too, but not like this. This is a different level.
Yeah. So they still want him to drop 20 pounds or so.
Probably 30.
Yeah. I don't know what he's at right now. I think he's lighter than 360, I would assume, already being on campus for as long as he has, and going especially through spring conditioning. And Kirby Smart said that these guys are not in shape. He said that emphatically. So they're running. They're running.
Running, coach.
But even despite him being a little overweight, at least for Georgia standards, Gaston, his you just said it, feet-wise, he looked really good, even at the weight he's at. So you can imagine how much better he's going to be, just a little bit slimmer. So another name to watch out for. And again, Georgia has a lot of questions on the offensive line. You're not just going to see 5 guys next season. If you watch Georgia the last few seasons, you know that for sure. So don't be surprised if Gaston gets some snaps in rotation. Bo Walker. Now, this is the most interesting one to me, I think, at all of these. Maybe Ethan Barber too. But Bo Walker, and you think about the running back room, we have Nate Frazier, right? The Robinsons are still recovering from, major injuries. Probably not going to be full go to at least fall camp, right? And when they do, they're going to be instant impacts. But that leaves some opportunities right now for younger guys in that tailback room. And remember what we said earlier about Kirby Smart focusing on the run game on both sides of the ball, but offense as well, and getting that aspect better and more efficient. So what does that mean? That means more stinking reps for tailbacks as well. And Bo Walker is getting his share of these and really impressing. I've heard Nate Frazier comps already as far as what Nate Frazier was doing in the spring last year to what Bo Walker's doing right now. So I was really impressed by that. And you think he was a 47th ranked player in Georgia.
That just goes to show you how good Georgia is, though, as a state.
Exactly.
He probably gets a little bit short, not super heavy in the ass, but I bet you he's just a gamer, dude. Those Raven Gap guys too are just built a little bit different. You know what I mean? That kind of North Georgia, Northwest Georgia. Anyway,
I've never tackled a college back, Artie Lynch, but when I did tackle backs, if they were under 5'9", I hated it.
Oh, dude,
I just hated it. It's hard. They're hard to get your hands on.
No,
right? And when you hit them, their center of gravity just completely shifts, and somehow they squirm out of it. It's
And
just
they can get you right here. God forbid you're like 2 inches taller than them. They're going to make
yeah,
you punish. You know what I mean? Like we had who was it, man? We had one guy. Ken Malcolm was a little bit bigger, but like Ken wasn't like super fast. But my God, dude, he just ran so hard. It was like he would run into some of the backs. And Richard Samuel was like this. You're just like, you're like, dude, man, it's like hitting a Mack truck. You're like, stay away from me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
but I think a guy like this, Bo Walker, he can impress so much that he's playing himself out of a red shirt, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll be like, he's such a gamer. We'll figure out where to play him, right? We'll put him on special teams at first. We'll let him kick off, have a couple kickoff returns here and there to keep like you feed the ego a little bit, right? And then like, how it works, man. One running back, two running back, they're gonna get nicked up, and then Bo Walker can step right in and probably pop off for 90 yards one game, and then all of a sudden you have this rotation, and that's how it's built. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for him. That's what I'm hoping for him to work into, but
absolutely. I think there's that opportunity because we kind of assume that the Robinsons, Branson, and Roderick are going to be full go, and unfortunately, not have any more injury issues, but they've been really prone to. So you said it right there. I mean, there's probably going to be opportunities, and Georgia also has been working Dylan Bell there in the spring. They're kind of, I think they've bought into having him both at slot and at tailback when needed, which I don't mind at all. I mean, he's played really well when called upon there. And you also have Dwight Phillips and Chauncey Bowens. Kirby Smart raved about those two guys as well behind Nate Frazier. So excited about this running back group, man. And I'm reading analysis from folks in the spring, and I won't name them, but they're calling running back a weakness. I think it was ESPN actually. I won't name the writer, but like running back's a weakness, and I don't see it as a weakness in this group. I think they mentioned Nate Frazier's fumbles. I was like, he's a true freshman thrown into a role he wasn't really prepared for.
Right.
I don't think that's going to be a prolonged issue. I think he'll be. I think it's already probably cleaned up, to be honest with you, because I haven't heard anything about him dropping balls in spring, and he's taken most of the first team reps. So I think you'd have heard that by now. But anyways, regardless of the point, those are the guys I think. Ethan Barber at tight end, receiver Talon Taylor, defensive line, you got Elijah Griffin there, and edge Isaiah Gibson, Juwan Gaston, watch him at guard, and Bo Walker there at tailback. Some guys I think that would be really standouts, and when you leave Sanford Stadium after that, you're going to be like, all right, I need to learn more about these kids. I think we'll see them next fall. Artie, I want to ask you about this spring game situation. I'm glad that Georgia kept it. I've always enjoyed going to them as a fan, and then now covering them, I really enjoy it. I think the players get a lot out of it. I think the coaches kind of get kind of a game preparation, especially the new coaches that come in and are learning how you do things on game day and such. It's even a learning experience for those guys. And Georgia has some new guys coming in as far as the coaching staff as well, as players too. And also I think it's good to keep this mainly for the fans. Give them something to be excited about and draw some, like they're getting $10 per ticket, right? That's some money back. Probably some of it going to go to NIL, I would assume. Not exactly sure how they're going to split that up, right? But then you have programs across the country who are canceling this or making it an open spring practice, canceling altogether. Colorado and Deion Sanders, they're trying to work out basically almost like an NFL practice situation like we watch on Hard Knocks when, you got a team that comes in for 3 days, you practice, and then you play a game. That's what they're talking about. Syracuse and Colorado are trying to petition the NCAA to do that. That's what I want to ask you about. What do you think of hosting other programs during spring?
During spring, I think it's tough just because academics, like maybe I think it'd be really cool, and players would hate this, is like spring practice or spring break have like a
dude, they're not going
a cross thing, and I don't know, bring Netflix into, like, I think Netflix did a thing with Georgia anyway. Bring Netflix in and do like a week of Hard Knocks on Netflix or HBO.
Yeah,
I do think that I think it's a good idea. I think it'd be a better idea to do like for like second week of full pads and practice in camp, because camp is really long. I mean, you start last week of July, and you're until you hit somebody, it's like what, a Labor Day weekend until you're hitting somebody else, right?
Basically,
like
yeah.
That's a long time. Like you get tired of hitting your friends. Like I know it's you like hitting your friends for like a couple of days, and you're just like, man, like I gotta go. Like you're my roommate, dude. Like I'm sick of this shit. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how me and Christian Robinson felt, at least. Like, and so I think it'd be very interesting to do in the like. Obviously, Georgia wouldn't want to do that with like South Carolina because they play each other. But like if Georgia and Clemson,
Baylor or Clemson,
or just someone like from a regional perspective, right? Like Georgia and like UNC Chapel Hill, or like someone or Georgia. I mean, Georgia Tech, we play them every year, but like obviously Kennesaw would be a little bit outside the probably too much of a mismatch, but I think it makes sense, and I think coaches actually get a lot of value out of it because it's a great way to evaluate what does my team look like against another team that doesn't know what plays are coming, right? Like how do guys respond against true competition against the other team? And it's and don't get me wrong, there's the scrimmage type situations are always super important, but to be able to hit a live hat of opposite color that you don't eat, sleep, and go to school with, I think there's a lot of merit, or not merit, but a lot of value to it. It's just like it would be a timing thing. You can't do it. You can't take kids out of a school for a week. It's like, although exactly. I'm sure no one would care, but but I think there's a lot of merit. It makes a lot of sense. But I think you'll start seeing that though more and more if they do allow it.
And that's the first hurdle. Is an NCAA agreeing,
but again, back to what we talked about last week, man. Watch this NCAA president. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of things start mirroring the NFL and the other sports leagues respective to the sport to try to cater to it. But
I and wanted to hear, but I think that hosting a spring is another program is really cool. And I think the fans would absolutely love it.
Yeah, totally.
And the content that's going to come out of that would be great for any program as far as just social media reach and, being on the main page, everybody's Twitter and every recruit's Twitter for a few days because you got Georgia and Clemson going at it in spring practice.
It would be great.
Yeah,
it would be great.
The only issues I think are like if a coach is maybe on the hot seat and then they go and play a spring,
dudes would get fired.
That would be tough. And
dudes would get fired for sure, coach. Like, but like,
and then the injuries, that would be the situation, I think, too.
Yeah, injuries would be a situation, but again, like, dude, injuries, like, it's.
Yeah, how much do you have to be like, it's the game,
Yeah, I mean, look,
obviously you want to limit things, but.
And a lot of the injuries, dude, end up being like non-contact. Like, man, if you tear an ACL, you can tear an ACL in warm-ups, man. Like, I'll never forget to the beginning of the haunted 2013 season, Malcolm Mitchell tore his ACL celebrating a touchdown with Todd Gurley in Death Valley. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like,
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? But I do got to run, brother.
No, that's perfect. We'll end it right here.
And I'll see you next week. I'm pumped. I love that we're talking football here in March. It makes me the hair on my arms stick up.
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. I love it. Thanks for your time, brother. Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end, UGA Football live on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Check us out wherever we get your podcast as well. We'll be back next Wednesday, another episode, and we'll have our pre-G Day episode, just our wishes for that game, our expectations, and then we'll follow it up with a takeaways episode following that game. Till next week, Artie. I'll see you.
Go Dogs.